We're well into the build and things are starting to shape up. If you're already following the Great Guitar Build-Off, that's great. And if not, come and join me. You can jump to the first part in the link up there or below. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the construction of the neck. We'll see how far we make it as far as progress. So join me. Let's build a guitar. Hi, I'm Yoav and this is the Electric Luthier. This is the third part of my build for my entry of the Great Guitar Build-Off 2021. In the last two parts, I made the body shape and even carved the cavities in the back. But before I can make the custom pickup cavities, I want to have the neck positioned and all 7 bridge pieces placed. This will better let me decide on the width of the bridge, the neck, and the exact angle and position of the slanted pickups. I also have the multi-scale fretboard slotted, so the neck itself is the next thing on the list. I'm going to go over the whole process, but if you want a more step-by-step tutorial style video for the different parts of the build, I'll link them when I get there. So let's jump in. My neck blank is a 3-part laminated board with the pea as the middle darker stripe and poplar on the sides. The poplar is sort of book matched, and this has been settling and drying for about a year to about a 7% moisture content. I also plan to enforce it with carbon fiber rods, so I feel pretty good about this neck. Of the few blanks I've made, one did get slightly warped. I will not make a neck out of it, but it can certainly make a good matching headstock when I scarf join it to this blank. I made a simple 90-degree jig for my miter saw, and I set it at 80 degrees to get a 10 degrees cut. A straight and large enough miter saw can give a really clean and straight cut compared to the commonly used bandsaw. The headstock itself also needs to be much thinner than the neck, and I figure this will be easier to do before gluing. I need to remove about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters, and I use my trimmer router with an extended base with a surfacing bit. I slowly glide back and forth while moving back on the surface itself. Running it through a thickness planer would have been the obvious choice, if I had one handy. There are 2 methods of gluing a scarf joint, and I do go into much more detail in the more scarf joint specific video I'll link up there. Here I'm going to use the one where I glue the headstock bit under the neck part. Considering it will be colored, I can hide the seam very easily. I carefully dry clamp and align the headstock to the center line and the height of the angled neck. I then position 2 screws which will end up outside the headstock anyway. I remove the screws, detach it, and add a generous amount of glue. Using the screws, I know it will be positioned perfectly again, and then I add the clamps. I put wide pieces of scrap wood to better distribute the pressure of the clamps. It's more about even pressure than the force itself. When this is dry, it is time for installing the truss rod and the 2 carbon fiber rods. To get everything nice and stable, I opt for 4 screws instead of double-sided tape or super glue. I first position the fretboard to see where the nut is going to be and where the truss rod adjustment will sit. I'm going to be using a wheel type adjustment. It's in line with the original design, and I really like the fact that you don't need to route under the nut. I like it for strength, and the clean aesthetics are just a bonus. No holes, no covers. It does require a bit more planning and work on the heel side though. The position of the carbon rods will also need to move a bit to the sides because of the width of the wheel. Now you could and maybe should shorten them and start right after the wheel so you don't have to go as wide, but since this is a slightly wider neck to accommodate the 7 strings, I hope we'll be alright. I use the parallel attachment of the trimmer router and start with a 1/4 inch bit for the truss rod channel. If you want to see this part in greater detail, you can find it in the description or up there in the link as well. After a couple of passes, I switch to a wider bit with a round tip for that wider section of the truss rod. When that seems to be okay, I manually chisel out the area where the wheel will need to be. Now I start routing the 2 channels for the carbon fiber rods. The rods I have are 4 by 6 millimeters, and sadly I only have a 3 millimeter bit, so I'll have to do a few passes to get both the 6 millimeter depth and the 4 millimeter width for the 2 channels. The important thing here is to check your measurements and be firm with the parallel attachment so it doesn't stray off course, like I did here. When they're all in, I will prepare the fretboard to fit. The wheel should be the only thing not flushed under the surface of the neck, and I mark the position for it. I drill a couple of holes and then clean it with a chisel and files. It's all a bit awkward with the last fret being angled, but I work it out. I cut the fretboard at the nut line and somewhere after the 24th fret. I drill a couple of positioning holes to put the toothpicks in to avoid motion when gluing and applying pressure on the fretboard. These can be positioned on a fret line and later be covered by the fret itself. I choose to just put them outside of where the neck will be cut. I cover the truss rod adjustment area to keep it clean from the glue, and then add plenty of glue to the carbon rod channels and the whole surface. I hammer in the little toothpicks so I know the fretboard is positioned correctly, and I can clamp it down without the need to fiddle with it. I use radius sand blocks for the pressure. They'll put more pressure on the sides, and that's what I generally want. With good pressure distribution, 5 clamps are more than enough, and I'll let the neck rest overnight. By the way, there are more than one way of doing this, and I usually do prefer gluing the fretboard to the neck at a later stage and work on each part separately for as long as I can. This time, because of the multi-scale fretboard, I wanted it to be attached so I have less issues to deal with later. While the neck is drying, I've done some math and calculated that I want the width at the nut to be 48 millimeters and at fret 24 to be 63.5 millimeters. This will also match the width of the 7 bridge pieces. Join me next time when I'll be starting to shape the neck and hopefully finalize the body of Orangina. I'll also be linking related videos and the tools I used in the description below. If you enjoyed this in any way, please let me know by liking or commenting. And you're also welcome to a lot more information on guitar building on my website, theelectricluthier.com. And many more videos such as these on my channel. And until next time, go on, build a guitar.